Public hearing was properly noticed. The hearing will be conducted under the virtual protocol and was properly noticed. We have two cases tonight. Perhaps I should announce that besides myself, who is the present chair of the zoning board, also present are Lynn Echolt and members George Waugh and member Matthew Cole and member Gerald Mulligan. Also present is the zoning the building commissioner of the town of Orleans, Thomas Evers. The items which are to be heard tonight, and we'll take them in chronological order. First is case number 2142, that application of Jill Becker for a variance under General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 10, particularly for a change of use. The applicant proposes to convert the existing vacant office space at 5075 Finley Road into two one-bedroom apartments. I'll let the record reflect that Emily Van Giesen has also joined us, and also present is Stacy Faber, the board secretary. The property is located is shown on map number 47, parcel number 9. The case was properly, the notices were properly sent under the zoning bylaw and the statute. Who is proceeding? Ms. Kempton, are this yours?
No, this is not mine. I'm the second one.
Very well. Then.
Hey, Michael, I do have Jill Becker in.
Is she in the queue?
In queue, so she's able to talk.
Well, let's bring her in.
Working.
Ms. Becker, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm trying to start the video to let me in.
Well, we can see you now.
Okay.
And I've formally announced that we're about to conduct the hearing and the application that you filed.
Right, I heard all that.
I needed to ask, that it's quite important that whether any of the members of the board have had any communication with you or any of your agents concerning your application, and whether there's any other matter that ought to be disclosed to the board or the public, which would constitute a conflict of interest.
I've gone over my application with Tom Evers from the building department, but that's the only communication I've had with anyone.
No, I was mainly asking my colleagues whether they've spoken with you, and I hear no positive response. So I'm going to declare all the members, so all 6 who are present right now, to be impartial and indifferent. Tonight, considering this, will be the following members: myself, Mr. Echolt, Mr. Waugh, Mr. Cole, and Ms. Van Giesen. Mr. Mulligan will participate, but will not vote. So, Ms. Becker, tell us what you propose. You're looking for a variance.
Okay, I would like to change the use. It's currently 2 offices and 2 apartments, and I want to turn the offices into apartments. I haven't been able to rent the offices, and the previous owner before me wasn't able to rent the offices either. And there's a huge housing shortage in Orleans, so trying to accommodate everybody's needs.
So what we do is we've got the property being located in an industrial zone.
Correct.
I believe that you have included in the application section of the zoning bylaw, which I think requires us to permit this with, upon the findings, special findings. Let me see. So the board, your attention is directed to chapter 164, section 30, or section 164, 31 of the zoning bylaw, which provides in part that apartments may be developed only in districts as provided in section 164.13, and a special permit can be granted upon specific findings being made by the zoning board of appeals. And then there's, I guess there's 8 of them here. I know that there's 8, and I think that I'd like to hear some evidence, Ms. Becker, about how you satisfy those findings that we need to make.
What are the 8 findings?
Well, in 164.31. You see the list that you provided with us with your application?
I'm not seeing that, the 8 things, no.
Okay,
It's page 5B.
Okay. So I'm unsure what you're asking me. What are you asking me to provide with?
I'm asking you to provide some facts so that we'll be able to make findings that you satisfy those criteria. For example, whether your development is providing, number 3, you're providing for adequate traffic circulation on and off site, including pedestrian safety and convenience. And I suppose you might remark that since you're only developing 2 apartments here, it's 2 apartments, is that correct?
Correct.
That the impact on or effect on traffic circulation would be relatively minimal.
I think it would be less than what it would be currently if I rented them as offices.
Fine,
Yeah.
that's fine. Tell us about you've got the plans. How many bedrooms to these apartments?
1 bedroom each.
All right. So they're designed for, we'll say, 1 or 2 occupants.
Correct.
And how would that affect the business operation in the rest of the building?
There wouldn't be any business operation in the rest of the building.
So this is a total conversion.
Correct.
What about the lighting?
The lighting wouldn't change. It remains as it is.
Then I think you should describe it for us.
There's exterior lights that are dark sky lights throughout the front and back of the building and the stairwells.
Very well. Now you've been and visited the site plan review committee,
Correct.
and you had, I think there was a report. Went there in January.
Yes.
The site plan review committee found that the parking appeared to be adequate, that there's no signage involved here,
Correct.
okay? And they reminded you that the outdoor lighting has to meet the provisions of Orleans General Bylaw, Chapter 122, and directed downward.
Correct. I've submitted the tear sheets for the lighting with the application.
All right, that's what I needed to know. That's what I saw. So I'm not really sure. Why do you think that you need a variance rather than a special permit for apartment development under section 16431?
I could answer that for you.
Would you help us out, Tom?
Yeah, and she has 2 apartments in there already. But the bottom floor is business. So it's a change of use to all residential and would constitute an apartment complex, which is not allowed in the industrial zone
Is it
as
just
per
like-
164.13.
And do we need?
That
to-
was also a comment from the site plan review that she would need a variance.
Oh, I didn't see it in the comments. Let's see.
Mr. Marnick, and I'll also mention, just, I don't know what kind of decision you make, but I believe after talking to George, Missouri today, that Ms. Becker will need to come back for final site plan review. She's been through the informal, she hasn't been through the formal yet. And I think that's probably due to the amount of work she's going to have to put into that site to meet health and building code and everything else, pre-engineering cost. So if you do decide to grant it, you might want to just note that it needs final site plan review,
I can
or-
see
or
that.
formal site plan review.
If possible, I'd prefer that we could deal with this application without requiring Ms. Becker to come back. I wonder if the additional work would be of such magnitude that we have to take another look at it. Prefer not to.
Well, the final site plan, I think, would mostly concern septic system
Okay.
and building code issues more than anything else.
All right. Now I'm concerned with the necessity of making findings to satisfy the requirements of granting a variance.
I'd like to add that also in the special regulations, there's a statement that if she's requiring a special permit, the planning board shall review that permit request and then provide their recommendations to the Board of Appeals. So there's something else in there that would apply some action from somebody to give us some information.
Let's take a look.
That was in the application.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the conditions. This, Mr. War, Ms. Becker has brought to the attention of the board that the copy of the application for apartment development should be filed with the planning board at the same time you're filing the application for the with the town clerk. And the planning board shall review it and make recommendations to the Board of Appeals within 45 days of the filing date. And if the planning board made recommendations, then that would be referred to the zoning board. Did you go through that process?
No, I was under the understanding that I just had to file for the variance, that the informal site review was enough.
So George is suggesting full site plan review. So it's a stop with us, a stop back for full site plan review, and that's it? Tom, did I understand you correctly?
George is suggesting that the planning board had to pass on it and provide recommendations, which hasn't been done.
Where was that stated?
That is in 16431. 16431A8.
Eight.
I think the upshot of that section is to allow the planning board to look at the proposed development with a view towards the big picture. It appears to be a prerequisite, however, to the granting of a permit by the zoning board.
So I think the variance in part trumps this
Oh,
because she's not seeking apartments in compliance with 16413. She's seeking approval for apartments in
Jane.
excess of 16413. So the
Wow.
variance, if granted, would trump.
It would, if it's a change in the thinking, I guess, the way it's set up is that this is a change of use, and it kind of short circuits this whole other procedure, which would be by a special permit. Is that, I wonder if that is a preferred procedure. In other words, this is 16431 is fairly definite and detailed, and to shunt and not necessarily ignore it, but to consider it not to be applicable because the applicant has chosen for a variance. We're not really looking at these criteria, which the town, at least in some circumstances, considered to be important to such a development. I know, Ms. Becker, that you filed this application on October 8th. I would prefer that you used the procedure under 16431 that we've been talking about. And therefore, you would be permitted, if we helped you out, under a special permit rather than a variance. However, if we consider 16431 to be the governing procedure, then something's missing, and that is you've got to pass your application through by the planning board, requesting that they review and make recommendations.
I believe that's with a special permit, but I don't.
What I'm thinking here, Tom, is that now these are additional controls on the development that are contained in the zoning bylaw. If we do it by variance, then we're just figuring then we're only compelled to determine whether the 3 criteria or 4 criteria of for a variance are satisfied, rather than looking into these other conditions. That's,
I agree.
you see,
I
that's,
I don't think the planning board gets involved with variances.
no, but they'd be getting involved with a special permit.
Yeah, but
See,
it's not an allowed use in the district, so I think at some point it needs a variance.
Thir- 31 talks to other zones. It doesn't talk to the industrial zone.
it doesn't, I agree. Any thoughts, any other thoughts by the members of the board as to how we should proceed?
Well, unfortunately, I'd like to throw in another question, which has to do with the justification of the variance. And basically, one of the key things that she's attempting to justify it on, and I have no problem with the project, but we're using affordable housing as a criteria potentially for justification. And my only issue there is if we do and approve it, there would have to be, I think, some method of controlling the future use of these particular apartments to fall under the affordable housing criteria. And what the what the rates are, the percentage of family income, et cetera. So if we think that it's authorized by affordable housing criteria, then I think that has to be a condition, that's all, which would be, I think, difficult.
I'm not so sure about that, George, but I'm concerned that if we were to consider this application for a variance, we'd have to find hardship. And
I'm just saying that's what the hardship is stated as.
it's not good enough. I don't think so. Well, maybe it is. I'm not going to make a ruling.
So maybe we could just get clarity on the point of affordable housing, because I see that word used in the application. And the way that I read the application is that these will be units that are within reach and affordable lowercase a and not capital A deed restricted affordable. Could you clarify your intentions there?
My intentions were, yes, exactly what you just said, that they weren't going to be low, they were going to be affordable, meaning the normal average person could afford them, not low income people necessarily, not Section B or anything like that necessarily, just regular average affordable housing for a normal working person.
Right. So we have a housing study in this town that says that we need to create 100 new housing units over the next 10 years, and we're way behind doing that. So I'm highly in favor of this application. I think 2 more units would be great, even at market rate. I think it's a good location for it. And I think we need to be careful, as the chair stated, with procedure as to what comes first here in terms of site plan review or zoning board. But I think if nothing else, to leave tonight with a poll of the board to get a sense of how the other board members feel, I just personally would jump at the opportunity to have 2 more rental units in town.
So would I agree with you completely. I think
I also agree. My only concern is making sure we can specify what that criteria is. That was my issue.
I agree as well. I'm highly in favor of adding the apartments.
I think it's up to me to make some kind of a ruling as to what the proper procedure is.
May I ask one quick question before you do that?
Yes.
Relates to the procedure. I will say I'm pretty lost as between variance and special permit. But on the variance and the site plan review being informal versus formal, there was something in the materials, and maybe others could help me, or Ms. Becker, you could help me. It said something about the septic system and wetlands and issues there. Has that been resolved?
Yeah, at the informal site plan review, the wetlands said that there's, the person, I don't remember his name, said that there's no issue with the wetlands department because it's outside of the range. And the septic is that I had to get a new septic plan engineered, which I've gotten the engineer plans, and that's in this application.
Okay, so it's settled.
Yes, it's a matter of going forward with that once it's approved.
Okay, okay. I didn't quite understand what I was reading there. So I would just add that I agree with, market rental housing is a good thing. So I agree with other people on that. So, Michael, back to the sort of what procedure or which goes first.
Well, this is what I was thinking. We'll take this, since it's not for us to remake the application. The application asks for a variance. The building commissioner appropriately brings to our attention that this is a change of use. My thinking is that we take this as a application for a variance as contained in the application and apply conditions which would satisfy 164.31, not 1 through 8, but adopting the Ms. Becker's representation that well, the lighting would be appropriate and satisfy the chapter 122 of the Orleans general bylaws, that there would be 2 one-bedroom apartments designed for and to be rented with at market rates, or that the traffic would not be substantially affected. Those would be the conditions, and the opinion would contain findings that the satisfaction with the provisions of the zoning bylaw, not only for the items of the variance, but what would ordinarily be considered in an application for a special permit. So what we've done, what we would be doing is allowing the change of use, variance for a change of use, with findings that were detailed according to the application, as if it were an application for a special permit, and adding a condition or two which would restrict the use for apartment purposes. Do you see my thinking? In other words, we will have tied down the development, in no way restricting Ms. Becker's proposition, because that's what she's put on the table, without it being so vague as to grant a variance for a change of use for apartments and let it go with that. How does that sound?
Mhm.
I'm wondering how they'll require some work in the decision. How can we move this forward? Then we would need a motion to grant a variance allowing a change of use with conditions which would satisfy the provisions of section 164.31. Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
Very well. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Cole. Now, is there anyone present wishing to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application? Ms. Becker, do you know where we're going with this? Do you
I'm not
understand?
sure which provisions you're attaching onto the variance.
Probably generally that there'll be compliance with the any specific requirements of 164.31A, which we've talked about from the very beginning
Right.
of the hearing. I think you can do that. And I don't think we have to be any more specific than that.
Okay.
To require your development or any development to be consistent with the Orleans Comprehensive Plan really doesn't add anything, except to bring it to your attention that it exists and will do the right thing in that industrial district. Is there any discussion on the motion? Then I will poll the members. All those in favor, Mr. Marek, aye. Ms. Echols? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Waugh,
Yes.
Mr. Cole,
Yes.
and Ms. Van Giesen,
Yes.
reported present. Mr. Mulligan and Mr. Taub. Mr. Taub, are you, whether I could see you? He's muted.
I'm voting present, Mr. Chairman, is that what you?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm present.
Very
Present. Was that present enough?
Yeah, now I can hear. I didn't know whether you were still surviving after last night, Mr. Taub.
To be discussed in another context.
Very well. Ms. Becker, then you may be excused. Do you have any questions?
So the variance is approved with the conditions of 164.31, correct?
Yes.
So
I'll
the
write,
next step
I'll
would be
write-
planning
I'll
board.
write the decision. I'll write the decision.
I'm sorry?
I'll write the decision.
Oh, okay, okay. And I get that via email, or how does that work?
It'll be filed, general practice is after it's been signed off by myself and the secretary,
Mhm.
and it's filed with the city clerk. You'll be notified.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the board. I have now, and we all have, case number 2143. This is the application of Frick Roy Construction LLC, who has filed an application on behalf of owners William Finn and Suzanne Finn for special permit as set forth in Chapter 48, Section 6, under bylaw sections 164, 3CB, 164, 21A, and also a petition for variance under Section 164, 22D to construct a retaining wall as a required means of egress. This is all located at 17 Nauset Heights Road, map number 29, parcel 100. Has any member of the board had any communication with the applicant or any of the applicant's agents which ought to be disclosed or would otherwise constitute a conflict of interest? There's no positive response, therefore I declare that the board is indifferent and impartial. Those who I designate the following members to consider this, and myself, Mr. Eckholt, Mr. Mulligan, Ms. Van Giesen, and Mr. Todd.
Could I ask, under the circumstances of such good attendance, to be excused from the meeting, Mr. Mulligan, Mr. Marnick?
Yes, you may. Then in that case,
Thank you, sir.
let the record reflect that Mr. Taub has excused himself. Therefore, I'll designate Mr. Cole as the fifth member constituting a quorum. Ms. Kempton, do you want to proceed?
Sure. This is Karen Kempton. I'm an architect for Bill and Sue Finn. We are before you today to ask for a special permit or in the alternative a variance if requested by the board. I'm going to share my screen and pull up the site plan if I'm able to. Let's see. So this was part of your packet, but as you can see on the site plan, we have a 10-foot change in grade along Nauset Heights Road. We go from an elevation of 90 down to an elevation of 10. These photos are of the existing site. There's the existing house. Right now, there is a circular drive at the higher end of Nauset Heights. And then there is a third driveway entrance at the lower end, which wraps around the house into a large parking lot here. Where the red arrows are is the retaining wall, existing retaining wall, that starts about 10 feet from the pavement and goes all the way to the corner of the house, which is about 20 feet back, so totally in the setback area. And at this highest point, there's probably a 7 or 8 foot drop. I have another picture of this as well. So again, the curved driveway is up on the right. This is the third entrance from Nauset Heights. As you can see, there's quite a different drop and change in grade from down at this level to the top grading over here.
Do you have the other site plan?
The landscape plan?
Well, what I'm looking at now is showing what it's going to be, not what it is.
Can you see the pictures when I pull them up?
No,
I haven't seen it. I have the pictures, but I can't see them on the screen. They haven't come up.
Okay. I'm not sure how I can do that, but the pictures are in your
packet.
handout.
I have a series of, we have a series of pictures, and 2 of which relate to 17 Nauset Heights Road, showing the existing retaining walls.
The first 2 photos are of the existing house, and you can see the red arrows pointing to the existing retaining wall. Do you see those?
I don't, well, of course, it's probably on the original. I don't, on what I'm looking at now, I don't have, I can't tell red arrows.
First photo has a red Ford Explorer Expedition in it, right?
Correct.
Karen,
Stacy,
this
is it
is
easier
Sarah.
for you to pull up the photos? So you can't see my screen at this point, is that correct?
I am looking at a portion of the site plan.
But no photograph.
But you're showing the proposed, not the existing.
Right, this is the proposed, the existing is underneath. Are you able to see my cursor on the screen?
Yes, I can
Yes.
see it.
Okay, so the existing retaining wall is this double line, this lightly dashed double line here. It starts about 10 feet from Nauset Heights and continues all the way to the corner of the existing house, which is this shaded hatched area here is the existing house 20 feet back. You can see it says 21 feet existing. So that's the existing house. Retaining wall starts 10 feet from the street and ends up here. There
Okay,
is Again, if you look at your photos, you'll see that there is 3 entrances from Nauset Heights, existing 3 entrances. So again, on the site plan, you can see the lightly dashed curved area here
That's not what we're seeing.
on the site plan.
I think you're looking for the existing conditions. And we're looking at the proposed house that you want to build.
The existing conditions are also on this plan,
Oh, they are?
lightly.
Oh, I see.
So if you see where my cursor is, can you see
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
That's the existing driveway, the existing curved driveway.
All right.
There is also then that 3rd driveway entrance that's down here and it wraps around to the bottom of the existing house. So this line here represents the existing house.
Okay.
Again, it's easier to see on those photos that were part of your packet, the first 2 photos.
Karen, I can pull them up on the screen if
That
you
would
want
be
me to.
great.
Okay.
Oh, great.
Okay. So this is the existing house, and you can see this curved driveway is up at the higher elevation of Nauset Heights. And then as we continue on down Nauset Heights, there's a 3rd entry garage that wraps around to the lower level of the house. So back to the site plan, the other odd site constraint is that the property line is actually 25 feet back from the edge of the pavement. The new home will be designed to meet all the zoning criteria. However, the stair access to the front door of the home will be in the setback. And the difference being from a regular entry stoop that you might have in the front, we have to overcome an 8-foot change in grade. Those are some other houses down the street. I think we can just go back to the site plan at this point. So rather than having a straight staircase up from the front of the house to the door that has to go over an 8-foot change in grade, we're proposing this curved entry steps that wind into the existing grade to get you up to the front door. The proposed retaining wall, which are the dark lines, is 25 feet back from the edge of pavement. So it's still sufficiently remote from the street. The landscape plan, I think you have a copy of that as well, shows the spot grade elevations. And so you can see on the driveway side of the retaining wall that there's less than 2 feet high along the curved driveway. So it is not a high retaining wall. It's only 2 feet along the driveway on the Nauset Road Heights face. And as it wraps around to the garage, as it drops in grade so that you have the drive under garage. At the closest point to the garage doors, there is a 7-foot high wall. But again, it's only that first maybe 4 feet coming out of the garage. Rather than, keep in mind, the existing retaining wall that wrapped around the front and to the side of the house. The raised planting beds in this circular walkway also help disguise the walls as the steps continue up to the entry patio. And the entry patio then is at the same grade elevation as the side parking lot that's on the right side of the building. By code, we do need egress to grade, and this is achieved through the number of steps, which we've disguised within the actual grading of the front yard. So we hope you find this as an attractive addition to the streetscape by softening the changing grade from the drive under garage up to the front door. In discussions with Mr. Evers, he suggests we come before you for the retaining wall in the setback, even though it's not a house, a deck, a porch, or an accessory building. So we are filing for a special permit as there is an existing retaining wall in the front yard rather than a variance, but I'm happy to go through the criteria for each. Did you want me to go through the criteria on this as well?
Yeah, yes, I think I would.
So number one, adequacy of the site. It is an existing single-family residence. It will remain that. There will now be 2 curb cuts instead of 3. Suitability of the site. There will be no regrading on the Nauset Heights roadside against the Nauset Heights Road. We have submitted a plan to Tom Bailey, the DPW, who has no issues with the driveway and only asks that the front planting bed not have any large shrubs, keep them well maintained and keep them low, which we're happy to do. Impact of traffic flow and safety. Again, we're going down to 2 curb cuts rather than 3, so the homeowners don't have to back out onto Nauset Road. They can drive around and head out normally. The safety is also for the family for egress from the front door out to grade. Impact on neighborhood visual character. The new house will make the front door actually face Nauset Heights. Rather than at the existing house, you're looking at the end of the house and the front door is off to the right side. So you can't even see the front door. So we think this is a more attractive use of the property. Adequate method of sewage disposal, source of water and drainage. There will be a new Title V system, as you can see on the site plan at the rear of the lot. Drainage from gutters will be to catch basins and all water will be kept on site. So that doesn't change. Adequacy of utilities and public services. The new utilities will be underground, so there will be no more overhead wires to the house. There is a utility pole along Nauset Heights Road, and that will remain. Noise and litter. Obviously, during construction, there will be dumpsters that will be periodically emptied by the contractor, Rick Roy Construction. Impact of groundwater quality, recharge volume, water quality, and coastal and freshwater bodies. We have no impact at this site. And that's all I have. On the line is also Kyle Cullity from Executive Landscaping, if you have any questions for him, and I believe the homeowners are also listening in as well. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions by any members of the board?
You're basically asking for a variance for the question of 30 square feet of building elements under 124.22D. I find it difficult to accept a number that just says greater than 30. I guess if we're going to grant a specific variance, I'd like to know exactly how many feet you are over the 30 square foot requirement.
When you're talking square footage, do you mean the patio area and the steps area, or just the specific retaining walls?
Well, you're requesting a variance in accordance with 164.22D, which specifically specifies projections, and the stoop shall not exceed 30 square feet. So I guess if you're asking for a variance for something, you should know what you're asking for a variance for and basically come up with a number. So potentially I'm suggesting that, saying words for you, that if the width of these setbacks that you're building are what's of concern, then there should be a specific amount of square footage for them around the building. And again, the only reason for asking that question is if it's greater than 30, is it 35, 40, or And if we don't specify what it is, tomorrow it could be 100 or 200. So I'm just
Well-
looking for a specific value for what we're approving, if we approve it.
I'm thinking, George, that we can restrict the shape and also the size of the retaining wall or stoop or projection according to the plans that we're looking at, or that are filed with the application. That may be, would that be enough to satisfy you?
If that's what you're willing to do, that would be sufficient.
I think so, because our general thinking, members of the board, is that once we pass on and consider any series of plans in connection with an application, that if there's any relief granted to the applicant, that they go away and are restricted to that and whatever they filed with us and nothing further, unless they come back and tell us but that they've got a change in plan for one reason or another, which happens periodically with construction. So I think that if that would satisfies me, George, if you understand what I was driving at,
Yes, I do.
because it does have the plans. There's two plans. One is the landscape plan, and the other, which Ms. Kempton was showing us, and that does have some fairly definitive dimensions, even though they may not be scaled out with precision. This appears to be an extremely graceful entrance and improvement on the what is on the ground right now. That's just my take on it, and I wish I could have seen it in three-dimensional rather than just two-dimensional on the plans. I can appreciate it greatly by the two photographs of 17 Nauset Heights Road that you've shown, the existing one clamshell semicircular driveway, and the other which goes down. To me, even the sense of depth is amazing. You are not changing any of the grading of the lot. What you're doing is you're modifying the new entrance and its accoutrements. We'll call it a projection, according to section 22, to modify to the existing topography. Is that a fair way of putting it?
Yes.
No, I didn't mean ask you. I'm asking Ms. Kempton, and let the record reflect that Mr. Finn is one of the owners who has joined the meeting too. And if you have anything you want to add to Mr. Finn?
No, the way you put it sounded right to me.
Well, that's just my interpretation of the plans. Members of the board, you are instructed that 164.22 D of the zoning bylaw, from which the applicant seeks relief, states as follows: projections. The projection of steps, eaves, chimneys, cornices, bay windows, and other building elements into any required yard shall be allowed. In no event shall the projection of steps and stoops exceed 30 square feet in area, nor shall it be covered by a structure. I think it's a kind of a stretch to determine whether that wall, as it's shown on the plans, constitutes a projection, but that is what Mr. Wall was drawing to our attention, and that there's a limitation of 30 square feet, and it doesn't appear that the plans show much of an area in excess of that. Any questions by any members of the board? Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application? no response. So I'll close the hearing for the taking of evidence and ask if what the sense of the board is. One may say that the proposed construction exceeds the attractiveness of the stone retaining walls, which are shown in the neighborhood as a comparison. I'm in favor of the application. I think the board can entertain a motion to grant relief as sought by the application.
So I'll make that motion, and I'm in favor of approval as a special permit. The one condition or note that I'd like to add is that our approval in no way should be construed as approval for other elements on the plan. We're specifically looking at the retaining wall. There's a substantial amount of improvements shown between the road and the property line, beyond the property line, and I don't want our approval for the retaining walls to be construed as approval for those improvements. So with that caveat, I'll make the motion to issue the special permit.
The understanding then that the condition would be that the special permit is granted on the condition that the approval is only for the retaining wall as shown on the plan and no other improvements. Is that a fair way of putting it, Matt?
Correct, and that grants the relief requested without going beyond.
So all the applicant wanted, I think, from us. Is there a second?
I'll second Matt's motion.
Second by Mr. Mulligan. Any discussion on the motion? Then we'll vote. All those in favor, Mr. Marnick. Aye. Ms. Echols.
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan.
Yes.
Mr. Cole.
Yes.
And Mr. Wall.
Yes.
Ms. Van Giesen will be reported as present.
Yes.
Then I will write the opinion. Thank you for presenting. Is there any further business to? Oh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think there's any other further business we really need to take tonight on the night after a national election. There were a number of relatively benign articles taken up and considered and approved by special town meeting on Saturday concerning the zoning bylaw. I'm not going to talk about them, but I don't know who was able to be present at the beach parking lot on Saturday, but bear in mind that there was a second pass on the cannabis shops, which somehow or other were allowed to proceed, and the previous revocation or prohibition was revoked. Therefore, the zoning board will be considering at some appropriate time, if it ever comes to that, if there's any developer, the permitting of cannabis retail shops. Stay tuned, members of the board. Any further business to come before the meeting?
Just like to ask Stacy if we have prepared to stick out in the front foyer the packets for the next meeting on the 14th of November.
There's no meeting on the 18th of November. The next one, I believe, is going to be in December. So the deadline is this Friday, so I'll let you guys know and I'll leave them out front for you. Yes,
So no more meetings till December.
correct.
Very well. Then we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Do we need to approve our minutes from the last one? No?
Yeah, I'm sure that it's, let me just, it would be in order generally, Lynn. It did not appear on the, as part of the notice of the public hearing. I suggest that we take it up at the next meeting.
Okay.
And that will be all the previous minutes.
Okay.
Okay. There's a series of them. I will cooperate with Stacy Faber to present them all to the board well in time, so that we can consider them and have them filed as the town clerk would really like us to file. Thank you for reminding us.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
a second, all in
Second.
favor? Motion passes unanimous.